Hi, everybody. Welcome back to D&D Hobbyist. This is Workshop, D&D Daddy, your buddy, Work. Was just going to give a late synopsis of the last session. So that was our February session, and we are about ready to play our March session this Sunday, so just in a couple of days. So I'm a little late getting this up to you. Hopefully I remember everything. I got a couple, so I wanted to talk about the session. Specifically, the adventure, Drums in the Marsh, why I picked it, and kind of what happens in the adventure and the way that we played through it. But first, the players and characters. So, out of my 4 players, I had 3 of them playing. So, Kellen is setting this adventure out. So, the last session and this upcoming session. And then we'll be back again for Tomb of Annihilation. But we started. So I had Connor. Connor again is playing Uriel Silverbow, the half elf rogue, straight rogue. He had considered a different subclass. I was going with subclass of thief because again I had made the character for my friend Mike, and then Connor picked up the baton and kept running with it because he's sort of the center of the party and kind of my story so far. And Connor hasn't played a whole lot, and thought it would be easier to just pick up a pre-made and keep going. So that worked out really well. But he wasn't especially warm to Thief, because Thief is vanilla, right? It's vanilla rogue. It wasn't very flashy, didn't have a whole lot of special stuff he could do. And I kept explaining, that for what I had made him for, which was basically a trap springer and skill monkey, he was really good at that. And I told him, read online, do some research, see what subclasses you're interested in. And I had sent him an article, I think from Bella Lost Souls or something, basically like a listing of all the possible subclasses for Rogue and different opinions of them. And of course, the one I sent him had Thief as the number 1 choice. So after some time studying and some soul searching, he decided that Thief was what he was going to stay with. So he is a Rogue Thief half elf. We are currently level 5. So Riley, my other, probably the most experienced player in the group, made a new character. So she was playing a cleric, and now she switched to a wizard, abjuration wizard, also a half elf. The story we kind of made was that she's probably half Eladrin, and her mother was a planar elf. The backstory is, her dad was human, her mother is an elf. Her mother is a jet-setting anthropologist, also a wizard, and the character, what's the character's name? Corinne, is an archaeologist, so took the archaeologist background feat and is an abjuration specialist wizard. The explanation being that she wanted to be able to defend herself while exploring tombs, etc. And the tie-in that I gave her, the reason that she was at the Crossing Inn to begin the adventure, was that she had read some writings by traveling bards. And Rosamund Call, the guy who owns the Crossing Inn and is basically the quest giver for Drums in the Marsh, he has mind flayer wounds on his head. And I said that the story that the bard had gotten from him was, to her, sounded like maybe the mind flayers, instead of being controlled by an elder brain, were controlled by an aboleth. And there was a symbol that she recognized of being abolethic in origin. So she's an archaeologist, but she is, because the mother's an anthropologist and there's animosity there, she looks for more ancient civilizations that are less anthropomorphic. So aboleths, obviously, aboleths are not especially anthropomorphous, being mostly Piscean. And Riley, the player, didn't know a whole lot about aboleths, so it lets me do a little bit more of the deep D&D lore and interesting stuff that I can pull out to kind of, make it more enriching experience for her. So now she's researching aboleths and mind flayers and trying to, a little bit of eldritch horror. Never hurt anybody in their D&D. So she's excited about that. Now she has like some direction for her character. She's like, I'm so excited, but I'm also terrified. So she actually has a home in Baldur's Gate on the Sword Coast. I know, and so she traveled to the Crossing Inn, which is the closest main city would be Flan. So she came in through Flan and now is there. But very nice character. Very, very tanky. I really liked playing with it or having it play, whatever, you know what I mean. And I gave her a couple like lesser magic items. I think I gave her like boots of jumping, maybe. I gave her some kind of boots, and I gave her bracers of AC because just because she needed something. And I also loaded her up with spells. I just, basically said that she had a lot of access to spells through her mother and through the training that she received. And I gave her scrolls that she can commit to her spell book at a later time as she levels. So she has spells that she can't cast, that she can cast from scrolls in an emergency. But she, I explained that her character largely doesn't want to do that. Like the character wants to transfer them to the spell book once they are of sufficient power. So that's Riley's character, Karina. I think it was Corinne. And then a half elf wizard. And then Dayton, he was playing. What had he played? He played a sorcerer, Yaz, dwarven sorcerer. So he abandoned the dwarven sorcerer, Yaz. He didn't like the backstory, kind of pinned him in, and he wanted to play. He wanted to play a skeleton. So he wanted to play a skeleton that was a cleric of the death god, and he had some homebrew rules that would let you play a skeleton, PC skeleton race, and so overpowered. And we were like joking about it, and I never said no. I never said, I was like, my main concern is all the immunities, because he's kind of immune to everything, and it has damage reduction, and he's like, oh, really, and then like the more we looked into it, the more he's like, oh God, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, that's crazy. He's like, why would anybody write this? So he went from, in a couple of hours, he went from, I'm really excited about this character, check it out, to, holy crap, there's no way I would ever let anybody play that. And he came to that on his own, which was kind of the idea there. So that worked out. So I did the next best thing. So he's playing a human who worships the death god. He read through all the death gods that he could find online, specifically for the Forgotten Realms, and he actually decided on Jurgal or Jurgal. Jurgal is old, like before Merkul in the Forgotten Realms. I had actually never even heard of him, but pretty interesting. Is like an original god of death, and he's lawful neutral, and that's kind of what we wanted to go with. Initially, he wanted to do Kelemvor, but the more he read into Kelemvor, he realized that Kelemvor abhors undead, and he didn't want to abhor undead. He wanted to utilize undead. So whenever he read into Jurgal, Jurgal is all about judgment, and it's all about respect for the dead and respecting them, making sure that they, they're treated with the reverence that they deserve. So, but Jurgal's a dead religion. I mean, it's a dead religion, centuries over. So, what the religion of Jurgal in the Forgotten Realms, as it's portrayed, is as a cult. So there are like little clusters of these guys that worship Jurgle, um, that are like cultists, like weird little yeah, little clutches of these zealots. So well, that's cool, and he embraced that because again, his original story was for a skeleton. So the idea was that this guy got trapped and died, but while he was dying, he like was chosen by the god of death. So when he died, he became undead and kept worshiping and stuff. So he's chosen of the god of death. It's just that it's Jurgle. So he really hasn't had any contact with anyone else in the clergy or the Church of Jurgle. He was contacted by Jurgle. He has, dreams. He has epiphanies. He has subtle communications with Jurgle, and Jurgle provides him with powers. So he's a Death Domain human cleric, again, level 5. And I gifted him a couple of different things. The one thing that I gave him is kind of everything, is armor of Jurgle. So it's like full plate, and it's also gauntlets of ogre power, and it provides proficiency with heavy armor, because cleric just out of the book isn't proficient with heavy armor, which I didn't realize. I think I knew that, but so super powerful, basically like kind of artifact level, +1. Full plate is huge in the first place, and then to throw the ogre power, and I told him, just basically dump stat strength and spread the rest around. So he was happy to do that, and that's his only magic item, because that's a ton. So he's the healer. So the reason he came to be where the quest is he was sent there by his god. So he was sent looking for Uriel. He was given visions that he is to accompany Uriel. And the idea there is that ties into the Tomb of Annihilation. So as he goes into the Tomb of Annihilation, obviously, if for what you know of the Tomb of Annihilation, is a huge threat to the gods of death, and the gods of death wish to be active players in this quest to fix everything. So I'm setting up the pieces, right? Because I know there's an aboleth in one of the side quests of Tomb of Annihilation, and I know obviously the main story of the Tomb of Annihilation, so the gods of death would be like pulling out all the stops and putting their best guys in there. So yeah, I'm still setting that up. This was supposed to be just a one shot. Like, I thought this was going to be like a 1 day, one adventure sort of thing, and turned out to be 2. So, yeah, Drums in the Marsh. So we started. People were a little bit late, not a lot, but coming in 10 minutes, 15 minutes late, as they do. Stuff happens, no big deal. And the one player said, he was out drinking with some buddies the night before, and he was in rough shape. So he apologized in advance, apologized for being late, apologized in advance for being in rough shape. And then whenever he showed up, he started drinking. So I think he was just so hungover and in a bad way that he went for the hair of the dog. So he started drinking, and we normally, guys will have a drink or two, or maybe smoke a little completely legal cannabis. Thank you, Michigan. But not enough to impair, to become impaired and become intoxicated. And this player came in a little rough and then went hard. So a couple of different points, he was like drunk. So it did affect the game a little bit, but we, it was still fun. He said he had a great time. Everybody was just kind of laughing about it because we're friends. It's a friendly game. No, he wasn't embarrassing or throwing up everywhere. Picking fights or whatever. He was just a little drunk. It was kind of funny. So drums into Marsh. So Uriel was still in Flan, and Gerbo. So Gerbo was Kellen's character that got killed in the Lost Mine of Phandelver by the Wraith. He got his life sucked out of him by a Wraith, and he was reduced to less than 0 hit points, which kills you. So he was killed. I already had his whole backstory running, and his master was dying and had sent for him, and he'd received the message about that and to return after the quest and everything. So whenever they took his gear, Uriel found that letter and had returned to Gerbo's master. And what Gerbo's master did, originally Gerbo was going to meet the master, but I changed it, and Uriel went to investigate, and there was no answer. The master wasn't there. He talked to neighbors. The neighbors were concerned because they hadn't seen this guy, and he's like a nice tinker kind of guy. So Uriel broke in because he's a rogue. He broke in with a neighbor witness to make sure there wasn't any allegations of misdoing, and found the body. Everything, like there were letters that everything was supposed to go to Gerbo. Gerbo being dead, everything went to Uriel because Uriel is the only one left from the party. So he basically inherited. So now he has his own homestead near the river Trank, but he also now has this workshop and house in Flan. And all the stuff that was in the workshop, and the master had made a wand of the War Mage. It's a wand that increases the DC of a caster's spells. It's an arcane focus. And I made this one. It was for an artificer for Gerbo. So the way that I made it, again, it's kind of high level. It's very high level. It's kind of whatever you want to say, Monty Hall. It was a +1 wand, but then you could spend an action to attune it to a school of magic. So enchantment or evocation or abjuration or conjuration, right? And if you did that, then for that school it would be +2 to the DC. So it'd be +1 for everything, but it'd be +2 for, say, conjuration. Okay, so you set it for conjuration, and then as a bonus action you could also change the sub classification. So like if you set it for say evocation, that's easier. So you set it for evocation, so it'd be +2 when you cast an evoke spell. But if you do a bonus action, you can set it for fire. So that all of your fire spells that you cast using that magic item as an arcane focus, it would be +3 to the DC. Like a fireball, burning hand, scorching ray, etc. It would be +3. It would be +2 for other evocation, and then it would be +1 for off school. I thought that was pretty cool. Neat little item. I just called it Gerbo's Focus, and I said it looked like a multi-tool because he's that guy, Arcanist. Yeah. He never got it. I made sure that I told Kellen all about it, so he thought it was really cool. Uriel basically sold everything. He sold the workshop and house to a family of gnomes who were very excited to get all of the equipment and everything. He made a ton of money and gems. He bought a bag of holding. So he bought a bag of holding, and he bought a purse, and we put the gold and some trade bars and gems and jewelry and different stuff in the purse, in the bag of holding. And then the bag of holding has other things in there too, but not a whole lot. It just holds containers. So like his backpack's in there, and the purse is in there, and I think he has a couple of chests in there. And then everything else is just on him. So he was still staying at the inn where his acquaintance girl worked, and he had met the Rockseeker brother, etc., before Lost Mine of Phandelver. And he received the message that Rosamund Call sent out about Drums in the Marsh, about the trouble, like the call to adventure. And he, because of his backstory, because they're from, his family is from there, he grew up there. His dad was a retired adventurer. Again, I've tied him in with all of these people. So the dad was a retired adventurer who knew Rosamund Call. Rosamund Call had basically the closest bar to his dad and to the homestead and where they grew up. And he was friends with Darren Eatermath and Fandolin. So that's all like the retired adventurers or whatever. So there's like the retired adventurer network. It's like the VFW. So Uriel knew Rosamund Call. He knew the crossing in. He was scared for his neighbors. He basically picked everything else up, settled his affairs, and with haste traveled to the crossing in. So that puts everybody in the crossing in. So the background for Drums in the Marsh. Drums in the Marsh was an Adventurers League quest. It's supposed to be level, I believe it says 1 to 4. I think it's 1 to 4. It may be 1 to 5. Well, I'm going into it level 5. So I have 3. I think they said the ideal is level 3. So 5 level 3s, and I'm going into it with 3 level 5s. So in theory, it should be easy. So I'm kind of beefing up the adventures a little bit. I'm adding some hit points here. I'm adding a couple of enemies there is my plan anyway. So they're all at the inn for different reasons, right? Riley's already there. She's interviewing Rosamund Call. Rosamund Call is preoccupied by all of this. So what's going on is there are missing farmers. So at nighttime, there are drums in the marsh. So you have the River Trank. I don't know if we have it on here. Can you see the Moonsea? So the Moonsea is right here. The Moonsea has, Hills Far, Melvant, and Zinnel Keep. So this is the Quivering Woods, right below the mountains. And you can see coming out of the Quivering Woods, you probably can't see, there is a river. And so Flan is like right here to the west of that. So the River Trank comes down through there, and where it meets the Moonsea, it creates a huge delta called the Marsh of Twilight. So the Marsh of Twilight, what I have done is envisioned it as the Okapango Delta, the Okapango Delta from Botswana. So I have a lot of pictures of that, and I sent that to my players, preparing them for the adventure, so they knew what they were going into. And above the delta, so to the north of the delta, along the Moonsea, there's a trade route, and it travels north to avoid the delta and crosses the river basically right before the delta. And there's a crossing, there's a bridge there, and it's the crossing bridge, and there's an inn there, and that's the crossing inn. So in the Twilight Marsh, I almost said Twilight Forge, in the Twilight Marsh, there have been drums at night. So they know that there are lizard men in the marsh, but the lizard men haven't been a problem for generations. Nobody really knows why. Nobody really investigates. There's no rangers or druids or anything for people to talk to. There's really not a whole lot. It's basically like, it could be lizard men, and obviously it's lizard men. The reason that I picked this adventure is because I wanted like a level 4 or 5 adventure with lizard men as the bad guys, and then I started looking into deltas and marshes, and it all kind of came together in my head. So I've wanted to play this adventure for 2 years, for over 2 years. So I was excited to actually get into it. So Rosamund Call is the innkeeper of the Crossing Inn, and I portray him, or I vision him as Randy Macho Man Savage from the glory days of the World Wrestling Federation. So Randy Macho Man Savage, right? And he is retired and old and white haired. And I actually found pictures online of the guy who was Randy Macho Man Savage. I forget his name right now, and I don't have it in front of me. So sorry, Macho. But balding, gray hair. The pictures were from his wedding, so he's like on a beach and stuff. But I shared that picture with everybody, so that's what he looks like. So Rosamund Call, retired adventurer, has this inn. There's so much information because I've gone over this 100 times preparing for the adventure over all of this time that I've been waiting. But he sends them on this adventure. There's missing farmers. A farmhand runs in. Everybody's gone. Rosamund, everybody's gone. I need your help. Oh, well, here's the adventurers that are going to help. Well, why don't you lead them where all the problems are? So he takes them down. I said that, Uriel is from farther north on the River Trank. He's not down here close to the marsh. So he doesn't know these farmers. He's never been to these farmers' homes. But, he understands their circumstances. He basically agreed to do the quest for nothing. Rosamund Call explained that he didn't have any money. Like they had passed the hat around to get help from the locals, and it was just pathetic. It was like 20 gold. It's like nothing. There's nothing in this for our adventurers. The wizard obviously is loaded. The other one's a holy man. He doesn't care for wealth. He's just here to follow Uriel, and Uriel just made a just insane amount of money from the lost mine of Phandelver and selling Gerbo's masters. Worldly items and all the Gerbos and everything. So he's flush with cash, and they basically agree to do it for free. So Rosamund Call explains that he will reward them with something special that he has from his adventuring days. That he will reward them if they can save farmers, if they can save the most people that they can save, if they do a great job, he'll give them basically a personal favor. He'll allow them something special that he's been holding back, a little something special behind the bar. So there is something in it for him. They don't know what it is. Spoiler: I bought a deck of many things. Bum bum bum. So I got a deck of many things from Forged. The next, I'll show them to you. The next roundup, they're what I wanted. They're like $15. I think they were $15. I wanted simple, minimal. I didn't want real flowery art. I just wanted something simple, and they kind of are. I think they're tricolor. They're like black, red, and silver. My disappointment was their size. I thought they would be twice the size they are. They're actually like little. They're kind of like board game cards, and I thought they would be oversized playing cards. So I was a little surprised by that. I don't think they're regular even playing card size. I think they're a little undersized for that. So I do have those. They will rescue farmers, so they will get to pull from that. So I'll let you know how all of that goes, and if anybody wants to draw from it at all, maybe they'll all pass, or it could ruin all of the characters and all of the setup that I've done so far. Could go either way. That's our chaos, but it's I keep trying to give people like standard, like traditional D&D stuff. It's like I wanted them to fight Sturges. I wanted them to fight an owlbear. I want them to, I'm trying to tick off boxes. Like they fought goblins and they fought wolves and they did, we're moving through like the tropes. Like they kind of fought a beholder, but not really. They kind of fought a wraith. So one of the things, was the infamous deck of many things. So I was excited to offer that to them. Obviously, that's not in the Adventurers League uh, quest or adventure. So yeah, basically they investigate these farms. Not only are the farmers gone, but most of their livestock is gone. They find the chickens are still there. The small livestock is still there. They find a bull that still has blood on his horns and stuff. So like then they can follow the blood trail. Basically, everything points to lizard men. They track the lizard men. They follow them into. They leave. I said the farmhand was like Dwight Schrute. So they left Dwight behind. Dwight stays at the farm where he's a farmhand. They continue south. No problems running the boat. No problems watching for stuff. So they get into the ambush, but they don't. They basically foil the ambush. Like they see, like they're not successfully ambushed, but they just had combat. So they saw these lizard men hiding and trailing them, and they pretty much headed for land and tried to get into a position that was defensible. I had them fight. I want to say 8. It was either 8 or 10 lizard men, but just straight lizard men, and they were fighting with natural weapons. A couple of them had clubs. A couple had blowguns, and a couple had nets. Early on they poisoned Uriel. Everybody else saved, but blowgun hit Uriel, and if it wasn't for the wizard just dropping fireball after fireball on top of these lizard men, every time she'd throw a fireball, it would take out 3 or 4 lizard men. So she kind of just shotgun blasted the way through there. But Uriel was not having a good time being poisoned. And while no one was able to really hurt the cleric, whose name is Beauregard, I forgot to mention his name. His name is Beauregard. They weren't really able to touch him because of the armor. He wasn't effective at really doing anything other than healing and buffing and things like that. So that combat was exciting. It seemed challenging. The party didn't really take a whole lot of damage. Like they weren't really in any danger, but it was a good first combat for this group because they kind of got to see what their capabilities are, like what they're going to be able to do in combat, and like sort of what sort of strategies they're going to need to try to figure out. Like grouping enemies together but not being too close to them, not getting between groups of enemies so that you're inside area of effect, and